14 billionaires who survived extreme poverty, #8, will break your heart. Behind the towering skyscrapers, billion-dollar empires, and glittering Hollywood red carpets lies a dark, desperate past that the world has completely forgotten. We are conditioned to believe that the ultra-wealthy were simply born into privilege, handed the keys to success on a silver platter. But the shocking truth is that some of the most powerful and influential men on the planet started with absolutely nothing. They were the children of broken homes, living in cars, scrubbing toilets, and surviving on the unforgiving streets. The blinding glamour of their current lives is merely a triumphant mask over a history of extreme trauma, starvation, and relentless struggle. Today, we are tearing down the illusion of overnight success to reveal the documented, heartbreaking realities of 14 men who fought their way out of the gutter to conquer the world. These aren't fairy tales. They are historically verified facts and brutal realities that will challenge your every excuse. Are you ready to see what it truly takes to survive? Make sure to subscribe to the archive to follow along, uncover more hidden historical secrets, and support our journey into the untold stories of the elite. The truth about extreme wealth begins in absolute poverty. Howard Schultz. Long before he transformed a massive global coffee empire and cemented himself as an American billionaire, Howard Schultz experienced the crushing weight of poverty in the unforgiving Canarsie housing projects of Brooklyn, New York. His childhood was defined by a single, catastrophic family event that permanently altered his psychological framework. When Schultz was just 7 years old, his father, an uneducated truck driver, slipped on ice while working and shattered his ankle. Because his father was an undocumented laborer with absolutely zero health insurance, no workers' compensation, and no savings, the family's sole source of income vanished overnight. Schultz vividly remembers walking into his cramped apartment to find his father essentially cast aside by the American dream, a broken man on a couch with a fractured leg, leaving the family to starve. This terrifying lack of a safety net fundamentally traumatized young Schultz. Desperate to escape the projects, he eventually secured a football scholarship to Northern Michigan University, but when he lost the scholarship, he resorted to literally selling his own blood to pay for his tuition and survive. Decades later, when he acquired Starbucks and built it into a global phenomenon, the haunting memory of his father's broken ankle dictated his corporate policy. He became the first CEO in America to offer comprehensive healthcare and stock options to even part-time employees. His billions were not born from a desire for luxury, but from an aggressive, lifelong crusade to ensure that no worker would ever feel as utterly abandoned as his father did on that freezing Brooklyn night. Ralph Lauren. Today, the name Ralph Lauren is globally synonymous with elite, aristocratic American luxury, conjuring images of private polo clubs, sprawling Hamptons estates, and generational wealth. Yet, the man who invented this modern preppy aesthetic was born Ralph Lifshitz, the youngest son of struggling Jewish immigrants living in the gritty, working-class neighborhood of the Bronx. He grew up sharing a single cramped bedroom with his two brothers, wearing heavily worn hand-me-downs, and observing a lifestyle of wealth only through the glowing screens of a local movie theater. Lauren had absolutely no formal training in fashion design, no elite Ivy League pedigree, and no financial backing. While his peers dreamed of basic middle-class stability, Lauren wrote the word millionaire under his high school yearbook photo, possessing a blinding, almost delusional ambition. Working out of a single drawer in a cramped Empire State Building showroom, he began taking discarded rags and wide scraps of fabric to hand-sew men's ties. He rode the subway to deeply intimidating department stores, personally begging buyers to take a chance on his unconventional, wide-tie designs. When Bloomingdale's demanded he remove his name from the label to secure a massive contract, a starving but fiercely proud Lauren walked away, refusing to compromise his identity. His gamble paid off. By projecting an image of the life he desperately wished he had as a poor boy in the Bronx, he successfully sold an entire aspirational universe to the world, proving that true luxury is a state of mind manufactured by the hungriest dreamers. Larry Ellison. As the ruthlessly competitive founder of Oracle and one of the wealthiest men on the planet, Larry Ellison commands private islands and America's Cup racing yachts. However, his entrance into the world was marked by total abandonment and medical trauma. Born in New York City to an unwed 19-year-old mother, Ellison contracted a severe, life-threatening bout of pneumonia when he was just 9 months old. Unable to afford basic medical care or handle the burden of a sick infant, his biological mother surrendered him to her aunt and uncle, completely vanishing from his life for decades. Ellison was raised in a suffocating, lower-middle-class Jewish neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. His adoptive father, who had lost his modest real estate business during the Great Depression, was deeply embittered and constantly verbally abused Ellison, repeatedly telling the young boy he was a worthless failure who would never amount to anything. Defying this toxic environment, Ellison became a brilliant but highly rebellious student. He dropped out of the University of Illinois after his adoptive mother died, and then dropped out of the University of Chicago after just 1 semester. Packing everything he owned into a beat-up car, he drove to California with just a few dollars to his name. Entirely self-taught in the emerging field of computer programming, he relentlessly hustled through odd jobs until he founded Oracle with a meager $2,000 investment. His staggering multi-billion-dollar empire is a direct, aggressive retaliation against a childhood defined by rejection and a father who swore he would fail. Eminem. Born Marshall Bruce Mathers III, Eminem is undisputedly one of the most successful and culturally dominant musical artists in history, boasting a net worth of hundreds of millions. Yet, his origin story is one of the most brutal, deeply traumatic rags-to-riches journeys in modern entertainment. Abandoned by his father when he was just 6 months old, Marshall grew up in extreme, grinding poverty, constantly moving between precarious public housing units in Missouri and Detroit. His mother struggled severely with substance abuse, resulting in a deeply unstable home life where eviction notices were a daily reality. Living as a white teenager in a predominantly black, highly violent Detroit neighborhood, he was subjected to horrific bullying. The abuse peaked when a school bully beat the 9-year-old Mathers so severely that he suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and was placed in a medically induced coma for over a week, teetering on the edge of death. Dropping out of high school at age 17, he worked grueling minimum-wage jobs as a short-order cook and dishwasher to support his young daughter Haley, living in a rat-infested mobile home that was frequently targeted by drive-by shootings. Rap became his only psychological escape, a raw, unfiltered outlet for his immense rage and depression. After traveling to the 1997 Rap Olympics in Los Angeles with barely enough money for a plane ticket and getting evicted the day before he left, his demo tape miraculously landed in the hands of Dr. Dre. The boy who was beaten into a coma and left to rot in a trailer park weaponized his trauma to become a literal rap god. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger's astonishing trajectory, from a starving Austrian village boy to an iconic Hollywood megastar and the governor of California, is the ultimate manifestation of sheer, unadulterated willpower. He was born in 1947 in Thal, Austria, a country utterly devastated by the aftermath of World War II. His family lived in a terrifyingly harsh, unheated home with no indoor plumbing, no central heating, and no telephone. Schwarzenegger's father was the local police chief, an intensely strict, abusive man who openly favored Arnold's older brother and frequently ridiculed Arnold's dreams. The family was so impoverished that one of Schwarzenegger's most vivid childhood memories was the rare, jubilant day his family could finally afford to buy a refrigerator. Desperate to escape his father's iron-fisted rule and the suffocating poverty of post-war Europe, Arnold discovered bodybuilding. He viewed his own muscles as literal tickets out of Austria. He trained with a psychotic intensity, breaking into closed gyms on freezing weekends to lift weights until his hands bled. Arriving in America at age 21, with barely any English vocabulary and completely empty pockets, he laid bricks and worked construction during the day to fund his grueling training regimens at night. He ignored every Hollywood casting agent who laughed at his massive physique, his unpronounceable last name, and his thick accent. By relentlessly treating his body and his mind as a highly engineered machine, the starving Austrian boy successfully conquered global bodybuilding, the global box office, and American politics. Jim Carrey. With a rubbery face and boundless chaotic energy, Jim Carrey became the highest-paid comedic actor of the 1990s, commanding an unprecedented $20 million per film. However, the manic humor that made him a billionaire box office draw was forged in the dark depths of severe childhood poverty and depression. Growing up in Canada, Carrey's life completely unraveled when he was 12 years old. His father, an accountant and the family's sole provider, suddenly lost his job. The financial devastation was absolute. The family lost their home and was forced to live entirely out of a cramped Volkswagen camper van parked in various lots across Canada. To survive, a teenage Carrey and his siblings took grueling jobs as security guards and janitors at a local factory. Carrey worked brutal 8-hour shifts, scrubbing toilets and sweeping floors immediately after attending a full day of high school, a punishing routine that filled him with intense, blinding rage and ultimately forced him to drop out of school entirely at age 16. During his darkest moments, staring out the window of a rusty van, comedy became his only psychological defense mechanism, a way to make his severely depressed, bedridden mother smile. In 1985, completely broke and struggling to make a name for himself in Los Angeles, Carrey famously drove his beat-up Toyota to the Hollywood Hills, looked out over the city, and wrote himself a fake check for $10 million for acting services rendered. He dated it for Thanksgiving 1995. Through relentless hustle, right before that exact date, he landed the starring role in Dumb and Dumber, earning exactly $10 million and proving that his childhood desperation was the ultimate catalyst for his historic success. Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio is globally revered as an Academy Award-winning actor and a highly influential environmental philanthropist, often pictured lounging on mega yachts in the Mediterranean. But the polished, elite Hollywood image he projects today completely masks the terrifying, gritty reality of his childhood. DiCaprio did not grow up in the pristine, gated communities of Beverly Hills. He was raised in a notoriously dangerous, crime-ridden neighborhood in East Hollywood during the late 1970s and 1980s. The streets directly outside his modest, crumbling home were a terrifying landscape of major prostitution rings, severe gang violence, and rampant drug addiction. He vividly recalls being chased down the street by a man wielding a syringe when he was just 5 years old. His parents were divorced, and his mother worked multiple secretarial jobs, struggling immensely to keep food on the table and shield him from the neighborhood's toxic environment. The crushing reality of poverty was so apparent to young Leonardo that he actively sought a way out for his family. At just 14 years old, fully comprehending their financial desperation, he practically begged his mother to drive him to commercial auditions after school, viewing acting not as an artistic passion, but as a direct financial lifeline. He endured hundreds of rejections, pushing forward with a raw, survivalist mentality. His eventual, meteoric rise to becoming the king of the world in Titanic was driven by a deep, terrifying understanding of what it meant to have absolutely nothing, ensuring he would never return to the violent alleys of his youth. Shah Rukh Khan. Known universally across the globe as the King of Bollywood, Shah Rukh Khan commands a colossal net worth and a fan base numbering in the billions, ruling an entertainment empire from his massive palatial estate in Mumbai. Yet his journey to the absolute pinnacle of Indian cinema is a heartbreaking story of profound loss and street-level survival. Growing up in a modest, middle-class family in New Delhi, his life was shattered by successive tragedies. His father, an incredibly idealistic but financially unsuccessful businessman, died of cancer when Khan was just 15 years old, leaving the family in immense debt. A decade later, he watched his mother succumb to complications from diabetes, a devastating blow that left him utterly orphaned, emotionally broken, and financially destitute. Armed with nothing but an infectious charm and a burning, desperate need to succeed, he moved to Mumbai to try his hand at acting. Without any powerful industry connections in a film industry notorious for deep-rooted nepotism, the future king of romance was entirely homeless. He spent countless agonizing nights sleeping on the hard, unforgiving pavement of railway stations and public benches in Mumbai, washing his face in public restrooms before begging directors for minor TV roles. He accepted the dark, villainous anti-hero roles that established leading men terrified to touch, taking massive career risks purely because a starving man has absolutely nothing to lose. His transition from a homeless orphan to the undisputed monarch of Bollywood proves that true empires are built by those who survive the absolute bottom. François Pinault. As the founder of the massive Kering luxury conglomerate, François Pinault holds the keys to the world's most elite fashion houses, including Gucci, Saint Laurent, and Balenciaga, cementing him as one of the absolute wealthiest men in France. But the man who now dictates global high society trends began his life in a state of humiliating, rural poverty. Born into a desperately poor family of timber traders in the rugged, rural region of Brittany, France, Pinault's childhood was miserable. He attended a local school where he was viciously and relentlessly mocked by his wealthier, upper-class classmates for his shabby, peasant clothing and his heavy, unrefined regional accent. The bullying was so psychologically damaging and severe that a deeply humiliated Pinault completely dropped out of high school at age 16, swearing he would never return. He had no formal education, no elite connections, and no inherited wealth. Starting entirely from scratch, he joined his family's meager timber business, eventually utilizing aggressive, highly calculated business maneuvers to buy out smaller firms. He possessed a ruthless, street-smart instinct, buying distressed companies during economic downturns when other investors panicked. Pinault systematically built a massive retail empire, eventually pivoting to conquer the luxury fashion world. He weaponized the intense humiliation he suffered as a ragged, poor farm boy to completely dominate the very same elite, aristocratic classes that once mercilessly laughed at him, proving that the ultimate revenge against poverty is undeniable: massive financial dominance. Sheldon Adelson. Before he passed away as the towering multi-billionaire titan of the global casino industry and a major political kingmaker, Sheldon Adelson knew the bitter taste of true Depression-era poverty. He was born into a desperately poor family of Jewish immigrants in the incredibly rough working-class neighborhood of Dorchester, Boston. His father was a struggling taxi driver, and his mother ran a small knitting shop from their home. The family was so severely impoverished that all 6 members were forced to live in a single, freezing, one-room tenement apartment. Adelson literally slept on the hard, cold floor because there simply were not enough beds. But the vicious streets of Boston ignited a ferocious, unstoppable entrepreneurial fire within him. At the staggering age of just 12 years old, he borrowed $200 from his uncle to purchase a license to sell newspapers on busy street corners, aggressively fighting older kids for the best turf. By 16, he had started a vending machine business. Throughout his life, Adelson built and lost multiple fortunes, completely dropping out of college and failing in dozens of ventures before he created the massive Comdex computer trade show, and later, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation. He famously risked his entire fortune in his 60s to build the Venetian in Las Vegas, a massive gamble that paid off in billions. Adelson never forgot the freezing floor of that Boston tenement. It was the driving force behind a ruthless business acumen that refused to accept defeat, no matter how immense the odds. John Paul DeJoria. John Paul DeJoria's life is a masterclass in aggressive perseverance. A man who built a staggering multi-billion-dollar empire encompassing Paul Mitchell hair care and Patron tequila despite being completely homeless. Twice. Born to poor immigrant parents in Los Angeles, his father completely abandoned the family when DeJoria was just 2 years old. By age 9, he was forced to sell Christmas cards and newspapers on the dangerous streets of LA, just to help his mother put food on the table. When his mother could no longer afford to feed him, he was heartbreakingly placed in a foster care home. As an adult, his struggles only intensified. Following a brutal divorce, a 22-year-old DeJoria found himself completely destitute, living out of his broken-down car with his 2-year-old son, surviving by collecting discarded glass soda bottles from the trash to cash in for 2 cents apiece. When he launched John Paul Mitchell Systems in 1980 with his friend Paul Mitchell, they had a meager $700 in borrowed capital. DeJoria was homeless once again, sleeping in an incredibly old Rolls-Royce, knocking on hundreds of beauty salon doors in Los Angeles, begging skeptical managers to buy a single bottle of his shampoo. He faced endless, crushing rejections, but his survivalist mentality allowed him to endure the humiliation. Today, the man who dug through dumpsters to feed his son is a prominent billionaire, proving that rock bottom is simply the strongest foundation upon which to build an indestructible empire. Guy Laliberte. Guy Laliberte commands an immense fortune as the brilliant, highly eccentric founder of the global entertainment juggernaut Cirque du Soleil, but his origins are rooted in the completely unpredictable, highly dangerous life of a vagabond street performer. Growing up in Quebec, Canada, Laliberte had absolutely no interest in traditional corporate success. He left home at the age of 18 with nothing but an accordion and a fierce desire to see the world. He hitchhiked across Europe, completely broke, surviving day to day as a busker. He spent his youth sleeping on park benches, swallowing real fire on busy street corners, walking on stilts, and playing music for spare change tossed into an empty hat. The life of a street performer was physically exhausting and financially terrifying, requiring him to constantly innovate his act just to earn enough money for a single meal. In 1984, he recognized a massive opportunity. The traditional circus industry was dying, heavily reliant on expensive, controversial animal acts. Armed with his deep knowledge of street-level human performance, Laliberte secured a small, highly risky government grant to organize a troupe of acrobats for a local festival. He completely revolutionized the industry, stripping away the animals and focusing entirely on breathtaking, theatrical human acrobatics. He risked everything, taking his untested show to the Los Angeles Arts Festival with barely enough money for a one-way ticket. If the show failed, the entire troupe would be stranded. The massive gamble succeeded, transforming a fire-breathing street beggar into the first official billionaire in the history of live theatrical entertainment. Chris Gardner. The agonizingly true story of Chris Gardner is widely known through the massive Hollywood film The Pursuit of Happiness, but the cinematic portrayal barely scratches the surface of the intense, degrading trauma he actually endured. In the early 1980s, Gardner was an incredibly smart but utterly destitute medical equipment salesman in San Francisco, struggling to sell expensive, unnecessary bone density scanners to apathetic doctors. His severe financial instability caused his relationship to violently implode, leaving him as the sole custodian of his toddler son. Completely broke, Gardner and his young child were evicted and thrown onto the harsh, terrifying streets. To secure a better future, Gardner miraculously landed a position in the highly competitive Dean Witter Reynolds stock brokerage training program, but the program offered absolutely no salary. For an entire agonizing year, Gardner worked viciously hard during the day in a high-end corporate office, hiding his extreme poverty from his wealthy peers. When the sun went down, the horrific reality set in. He and his young son would ride the public bus for hours to stay warm, sleep under desks in the office, or lock themselves inside a filthy public restroom at the BART train station to sleep on the hard tile floor. He sold his blood to buy food and navigated soup kitchens, all while studying for his financial exams. His unbreakable determination allowed him to outwork every privileged intern in his class. Gardner ultimately passed his exams, secured the job, and eventually founded his own massive, multi-million-dollar brokerage firm, conquering Wall Street while carrying the unshakable memory of sleeping on a subway bathroom floor.